Welcome to America Today. If you're new here, hit subscribe and ring the bell for daily breakdowns of U.S. politics and policy. Republicans currently sit with structural and political advantages in this shutdown fight, and those advantages come from numbers, messaging, institutional timing, and the shape of Democratic demands. Here's a researched, step-by-step look at why they have the upper hand, how it plays out in Washington, and what it means for voters and markets. The immediate, obvious advantage is arithmetic and control of the House. House Republican leaders have passed a so-called clean, continuing resolution that would temporarily extend funding at current levels, that gives them a visible baseline position and a clear public ask: pass this short-term funding measure and avoid a shutdown. Because Republicans control the House, the narrative starts with them offering a simple, procedural path to keep the government open, which is powerful in a blame-centric political environment. That arithmetic matters less in the Senate, where Democrats can undo block House measures, but the House majority still shapes the early framing. Republicans can point to a single, concise fix and say, "We passed a bill, Democrats rejected it," which is easier to sell in soundbites than a complicated negotiation over spending levels and program riders. Once a party has a simple, repeatable message, it becomes the baseline for media coverage and campaign ads. Timing and the choice of instrument also favors Republicans. By pushing a short-term CR that keeps funding at current levels, Republicans force the political debate onto whether opposing lawmakers want a temporary fix that prevents urgent disruption, or whether they prefer to trade votes for policy wins. That trade-off is politically awkward for Democrats because many voters strongly dislike a shutdown's tangible consequences: national parks closed, government services delayed, unpaid federal employees, and polls show large pluralities want a clean stopgap rather than a protracted fight. When voters prefer the easy fix, the party that offers the easy fix gains rhetorical leverage. A crucial strategic edge Republicans hold is their ability to separate the technical mechanics of funding from longer-term policy fights. Republicans insist that a continuing resolution should not be used to force big policy changes, framing Democratic demands, such as extending Affordable Care Act tax credits or reversing recent health program cuts, as add-ons that complicate a procedural stopgap. This frame has two benefits. It paints Democrats as obstructionist when they insist on policy wins inside a short CR, and it preserves the Republican message that their proposal is about continuity, not bargaining. That rhetorical simplification matters a lot in news cycles measured in 15-second clips. Institutional posture and presidential alignment amplify those advantages. When the White House publicly backs the House plan or signals openness to a clean CR, Republicans gain the added benefit of executive cover. In the current moment, the president has convened congressional leaders and publicly signaled either openness to a shutdown or acceptance that one could occur, a posture that both absolves Republicans of appearing fearful of a shutdown and allows them to use the president's bully pulpit to call for a clean CR. A unified message across the House GOP and the White House reduces internal dissent and complicates Democratic messaging. But the advantage isn't only political theater, it's also procedural friction in the Senate. Even with a House-passed clean CR, the Senate requires negotiation and, in many cases, some Democratic votes for cloture. Republicans' strategy exploits this friction. They pass a clean CR in the House, put the onus on the Senate to act, and then present any Senate delay as Democratic intransigence, especially if Democrats insist on attaching policy demands. That dynamic means the party that forces the other to make the politically complicated move first often wins the public fight. Another practical leverage point is the calendar. Short stopgaps have a shelf life. By proposing a CR that extends funding only several weeks, Republicans create multiple leverage points over time. Each new deadline renews urgency and gives Republicans repeated opportunities to claim they offered compromise while Democrats kept asking for concessions. Repetition matters. A single clean CR rejected looks like rejection. A pattern of repeated offers framed as reasonable amplifies the political advantage for the proposer. Messaging around essential services and emergency readiness also plays into the GOP's hands, particularly when natural disasters or crises are in the picture. Republicans can emphasize the need for predictable funding for FEMA, border security operations, and the courts, all compelling visuals for TV and social posts. Conversely, Democrats' push to attach healthcare fixes or subsidy extensions can be framed by opponents as opportunistic bargaining during an emergency, even if Democrats argue those fixes are urgently needed. When the public sees emergency responders and parks desks at risk, the simple message, "Pass the clean bill to keep services running," is easy to communicate and hard to rebut quickly. That said, the Republican edge is not unassailable. Policy substance matters. The Democratic demands focus on programs, like ACA tax credits, that affect millions of households, and if Democrats can successfully connect a clean CR to long-term harm for those constituencies, they can shift public opinion. Likewise, if a shutdown actually occurs and the public blames Republicans in post-shutdown polling, as often happens historically, the political cost can accrue to the party perceived as responsible. Polling in the current moment shows a mix of attitudes. While many want a clean CR, blame assignment in the event of a shutdown is not fixed and can shift rapidly depending on who looks inflexible on camera. A third set of advantages stems from intra-party discipline and the fragmentation of opposition. If Democrats are internally divided about whether to accept a clean CR or to fight for policy wins, Republicans benefit from comparatively unified messaging and a single baseline offer. Conversely, if Democratic leadership manages to unify the caucus around specific, popular demands, say, restoring health subsidies that voters feel immediate pain from losing, the advantage can flip. In short, unity versus fragmentation is a decisive variable. The role of external stakeholders, interest groups, administrative agencies, and local officials, also favors the party that can marshal the most credible institutional warnings about real-world harm. Republicans often highlight the operational chaos a shutdown would produce to legitimize a call for immediate funding. Democrats highlight the human cost of policy rollbacks to justify conditional votes. Both sides use expert testimony and agency warnings. The winner is the party that best translates those technical cautions into emotionally resonant public messages. Finally, the strategic calculus for elections matters. Republicans may see a shutdown fight as a way to consolidate their base by demonstrating toughness on spending and by claiming to have offered a procedural fix. Democrats may see the same fight as worth engaging because the policy stakes, healthcare subsidies, Medicaid changes, directly affect swing voters. That electoral lens shapes how far each side is willing to push. If Republicans believe they can force the narrative without paying a long-term political penalty, their positional advantage grows. If the opposite occurs, a shutdown that polls show voters blame on Republicans, the calculus collapses. What to watch in the next 48 to 72 hours? Whether the White House meeting produces concessions on specific healthcare language, whether moderate senators signal support for a short-term clean CR, and how quickly both parties mobilize TV and digital ads to frame the public narrative. Those immediate moves will determine if the Republican procedural advantage becomes a lasting political win or a transient posture that collapses under real-world disruption. In short, Republicans hold an upper hand because they control the House and therefore the simplest procedural fix. They can frame the debate around a single, easy-to-understand offer. Their messaging is currently aligned with the White House, and the calendar and institutional mechanics favor repeated leverage. But that advantage depends on execution. If Democrats unify, if public sentiment shifts against a shutdown's potential architects, or if the administration blinks, the edge can evaporate quickly. Politics in Washington is dynamic. The current upper hand is real, but fragile. Thanks for watching. If this helped you understand the shutdown fight a little better, subscribe to America Today for daily explainers and on-the-ground analysis. Drop a comment with what you want us to cover next. The Senate playbook, state-level impacts, or how a shutdown affects markets.